Hello, my name is Ed Wright, and this is a short video about a piece of music I've got going out on Modulate Rewind tonight, which is Friday the 28th of August 2020. And this was done back in November 2019 when it was kind of a whole different world back then, back when people could go out and do gigs and those sort of things. And yeah, it's fairly tech heavy as a piece. It's modular synthesis and audio sampling and all that. So for those that might want to geek out about it, it's a sort of quick rundown of what's going on and some of the ideas that were floating on around in it. So about sort of September 2019, a friend of mine lent me a book entitled The Black Cloud, which was by Fred Hoyle, and it looks something a bit like that. Hopefully you can see that on your screen. Yeah, he's one of the grand old men of UK astronomy, but this is actually a bit of sci-fi, and he's not really renowned as a sci-fi writer. I mean, there are times when it was a bit questionable about his astronomy. It was Astronomer Royal, I'm told, but also he was one of the people who was famously renowned for disputing or doubting the idea of the Big Bang in favour of the steady state theory of things, which we all know how that worked out. But yeah, he wrote quite a bit of sci-fi, and some of it's really cool. So I started reading this book, and yeah, in a sort of slight state of terror because I thought it might fall apart at any moment. I mean, it had something like 2 shillings and sixpence written on the front of it, which puts a date on it. But yeah, it's a really great book. If you get a chance to read it, then please do. Yeah, I really got into it and got hold of the audiobook as well to be able to have a listen to it, and yeah, it was great. And kind of that was that. It sort of returned the book somehow still in one piece to its owner, for which I'm really grateful, and kind of vaguely forgot about this for a while. Then it turned out a friend of mine lent me a chord Chaos Pad, which is a beast a bit like this, which is essentially a sort of sampling touchpad, and you can wiggle around with your fingers on it and trigger sounds and record them in and do all sorts of things with it, which is kind of cool and great fun. So I started playing around with that, and the first most obvious thing was find some audio to put into it. Having my phone on me and that audio book on my phone, I kind of just cabled it straight in and started playing around with it. Which, given the nature of it, had a really kind of 1960s B-movie kind of feel to it. This very recede pronunciation story of something to do with outer space and a visiting entity, and the sort of simple machinations of audio processing in there. And that kind of had a bit of a radiophonic workshop feel to it, which is kind of cool. So I kind of played about with that for a while. And sort of gradually built up from there. I got asked by Rob from Modulate to do a performance for them, which happened last November. And yeah, this got built up into that, which is going out again as part of their Rewind thing tonight, which is there, if you can see, hopefully. Yeah, so it got built up as a thing. So, obviously, big, 10-12 hour book was just impractical to kind of do, so gradually ended up editing that down and then trying to see what I could do with that in a sort of real world kind of environment, playing around with those sounds and those samples, granulating and pitch shifting and doing all those sort of things, but also then seeing what else I could add to that. So I was working a bit in various programming languages, especially actually in Super Collider, which kind of fits quite nicely in this, and it's still code based and you can make music out of it, and it kind of looks really impressive like that, and it feels a bit sort of space agey to sort of external stuff. So I made some extra kind of sounds in there that could be worked into this mix as a sort of background thing. And then essentially had two streams of sound. So I had this audio stuff here and some slightly floaty, spacey, prepared things over here. So I needed a way of sort of streaming those together, and very simply did it on a bog standard little MP3 recorder, sticking the spoken word down the left channel and the soundy stuff on the right channel. Which then you've got this setup as something sort of stable, that you've got that spoken word and that sound, and then all of a sudden you could actually combine those and play with them in the Chaos pad, which was really cool. In addition with that, then building on this kind of retro sort of fun oldie worldy sort of synthesis kind of way, built in the idea of modular synthesizer, which for those of you who've not come across things like that before, there's one that's set up that I used for the event. There were a lot more cables in there at the time, just to patch things to things through and round, and it looks wonderfully old and suitably sci-fi and kind of fits in with that aesthetic, and there's lots of nice buttons and knobs and things you can twiddle and twist and do live things and plug things in and unplug things and work as you're going, which kind of is a really nice tangible way of doing electronic music. A lot of it you try to get very used to sitting at a computer and mouse clicking, and that's the opposite. It's almost an antidote. And you see people with huge modular setups sometimes, and that for me kind of isn't quite as interesting, because you have to have so much pre-prepared setup done, so much intricate planning just to know where you're going, whereas a small setup like that, apart from the fact that it's a lot less expensive, you can actually really control and morph and get into and do stuff in real time, and you can find sort of quite elegant and distinct solutions to different sounds and different things along the way. So that then all kind of plugged into one big thing as a performance, and basically made for a final setup that in rehearsal looked something like that. Lots of plugs, lots of things all kind of jammed together on the attic floor, with a little MP3 player up towards the top right, the Chaos pad, and then a mixing desk to the left, mixing all the different sources together, and the analog synth, modular synth even, at the bottom, used as a way of controlling and manipulating and creating other sounds. So yeah, that was what it was. For those of you that might be interested in that sort of thing, modular synth, we've got an audio input there, a little Turing machine which outputs probabilistic pitches, a little oscillator, so sine waves, square, can't do this upside down, sawtooth and triangle, a brilliant little homemade module that a friend of mine, Charles, very kindly made for me, which does sort of 1-bit algorithmic evolution-y thing. Platts, which again is a sort of macro oscillator. Disting, which is a bit of a Swiss Army knife tool and can be programmed to do an awful lot of things. In this case it was pretty much pitch tracking. And LFO, an envelope generator which you can use to change pitches or change volumes and things over time. A little freezing module which basically takes a sound and kind of locks it in time and loops it over and over and over. A filter, a little sound processing thing which kind of does stuff like reverb and delay and echo and those sort of things, and a little mixer for mixing signals together, and a little voltage controlled amplifier for different levels and different volumes for different things. So that's essentially it. And it was just a case of gradually building this around that story and making it into some sort of coherent performance. So if you're about, pop over to the Modulate YouTube channel, or I think they're streaming it on Facebook, and it kind of looks something like that. It's on there, I believe, at 8 o'clock tonight, which is the 28th of August. And yeah, have a listen. Very different world, and yeah, any questions, get in touch at the stuff below, I guess. Take care, everyone. Bye.